50 Cent put out arguably the greatest rap album in history and Get Rich or Die Trying, but it was a miracle that he lived to put it out. 50 was gunned down, but the 9 bullets he faced couldn't keep him down. On this episode of Inside the Crime, we take a look at the events leading up to the shooting and discuss how 50 was able to turn his life around and change the rap game forever. Make sure to subscribe and drop a like on the video. Curtis Jackson III was born on July 6, 1975 in Queens, a borough of New York City. Jackson had it rough early on. His mother Sabrina died in a fire when he was just 8 years old, and his father Curtis left him. His grandparents took him in and raised him in Queens. By the time he was 12, Jackson was a heavy drug dealer, dealing crack and other narcotics at school. He also brought guns to school. In the 10th grade, Curtis got busted when his high school's metal detectors picked up on his guns. They found everything, and Curtis would be arrested. He was embarrassed, but didn't stop dealing. A few years later, on June 29, 1994, Jackson sold 4 vials of coke to a police officer. He was arrested again, and just 1 month later, his house was raided. The police found guns and drugs hidden around the house. After pleading guilty, Jackson was sentenced to 3 to 9 years in prison. Luckily for Jackson, though, he had the option to go to New York's shock incarceration boot camp. He went there for 6 months and managed to earn his GED while he was there. Just 2 years later, in 1996, Jackson began rapping in his friend's basement. He went by 50 Cent after a 1980s bank robbery. He was introduced to Jam Master Jay that same year, which eventually led to him signing with Columbia Records in 1999. 50 gained some traction with the release of How to Rob and landed a song with Destiny's Child. But just 3 days before they could film the music video for this song, 50 Cent was shot 9 times from close range outside of his childhood home. After 13 days in the hospital, Jackson was released. It took him 5 months to fully recover, but it was only 3 weeks before his shooter was killed. During this time, 50 was dropped by Columbia. The shooting was undoubtedly a turning point in his career. It not only straightened 50 out a tiny bit, but he gained a lot of fans from the press around the shooting. 50 capitalized on the new fans and dropped Guess Who's Back, his debut mixtape, in 2002. The mixtape charted at number 28 on the Billboard 200. It was only up from there. The mixtape caught Eminem's attention, who would sign him to Shady Records and introduce him to Dr. Dre. Later that year, 50 dropped another mixtape called No Mercy, No Fear. Eminem got one of the tracks, Wanksta, a placement in the soundtrack for the movie 8 Mile. At this point, 50 was getting a lot of mainstream attention, and that only picked up after his arrest on December 31st. 50's car was searched because of its tinted windows, and police found a handgun and a pistol. 50 was charged with 2 counts of criminal possession of a weapon. In February 2003, all this attention culminated in the release of his debut album, Get Rich or Die Trying. The album was an absolute masterpiece and performed ridiculously well commercially, selling 872,000 copies in the first week, fueled by songs like In the Club and 21 Questions. The album is considered to be one of the greatest hip-hop albums of all time. Everybody knew 50 Cent was about it due to his countless run-ins with the law, and this helped him become one of the highest-selling artists of his generation. Not only is 50 super fortunate to have made it out of the situation he was in, but us fans are lucky he was able to provide us with all-time albums. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you on the next episode of Inside the Crime.